Welcome
All
back,
right.
everyone, to another episode of the CLG-faithful podcast. I'm your host, Nefarious, and joining me, like always, is my co-host, Artron.
What's up, guys?
And this week, we actually have something a little special for all of you. We've got a guest from CLG, and he's basically here to tell you exactly what happened with CSGO. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, my name is Ricky, and I'm a video producer for Counterlogic Gaming.
All right. So, just let's start with just the basic stuff. What do you do at CLG? What does video producer exactly mean? How long have you been in the org? Stuff like that.
All right, that's actually a really good question. I actually came on I feel like my job has changed maybe like 3 or 4 times since I've been here. But I came on around July 2016. It's actually like post MSI. So like when the League of Legends team went to MSI, right? That's sort of the time when I started actually doing projects for CLG part time. And I started here as a remote editor. I was brought in, recommended by Miss Harvey. I was an editor for her. I still am, actually.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I specialize in a lot of Counter-Strike knowledge. I followed the scene very avidly for a while, and they really came to me to hopefully, use my expertise in marketing their CSGO team much better.
Okay. So just going off of that, what was the first set of videos you worked with for COG? Do you remember that?
Yeah, actually, the first set of videos I did as an editor were sort of their lighter pieces of content, sort of like the Lego team building activities. The first big series I did was the Finding Cindy.
That was
Everyone loves that. Yeah.
Yeah, the hardcore fans remember like the whole series of them looking for the dang cinder block. That was pretty fun, but like that was sort of my first piece of work for CLG.
Do you
Nice.
remember? Do you remember the origins of the whole Cindy thing at all?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Do you remember the origin of the whole the cinder block, or where that came from, or what it was for?
I think that was brought on by the current coach at the time, which was Coach Mike, who just recently departed CLG for the LA Valiant. But it was sort of a team building exercise to get the players to work together and come up with a solution. It really wasn't about finding the cinder block. It was more about finding themselves and their identity as a team.
Okay. What about the work you've most recently worked on? What's the last thing you've done?
So actually, we just released a video today featuring our most recent acquisition in the support position, Biofrost. I think it's called a Fresh Start, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I saw that today.
Yeah. So that's actually our latest piece of work that I've been working on. Like I said, my job has changed a few times here, and now I'm sort of working in a bigger team environment in a sense that I'm very specialized. I handle sort of project managing and producing side of videos, handling logistics, and making sure that, our DP Jack has everything he needs to, set forth in his creative vision.
Okay. So, you told us that you've done primary CSGO videos, correct? Or at least that's the thing that you had some knowledge in?
Yep.
Alright, so what are some of the videos that you've worked on or produced?
So, I believe my first actual piece for CSGO was... it was so far back. I think it was a iBuyPower vlog featuring Hazed. That was a long time ago. That was actually just right before Tarek left the team. And then after that, it sort of was like I'd show up once in a while, help film out. I did like the Garrett announcement when we acquired De Beers and Claudia for CLG Red. I also did that announcement. But the first real big piece of content that I actually had full creative sort of vision over was when the CSGO team with Sub Rosa and Ethan went to the major qualifier in Atlanta. That was the last E-League major. And that was something that like I traveled with the team. I did photos, social media, and I created the video from scratch.
Okay, so you did pretty much everything there.
Yeah.
So what is it like now? Are there other people to help you with that process, or do you still do a little bit of everything?
I think it's sort of like we all do a little bit of everything here. But as we grow as a company, we sort of start to realize where our strengths and weaknesses lie. So my biggest contribution that I provide and the best value that I can provide to, the content department is handling logistics, handling, analytics for YouTube, like what works, what doesn't, what kind of content should we do, and then understanding what are the key beats, what are the key things in the esports scene that we need to talk about, that we need to address, what's our game plan for 6 months from now, right? And then how can I set things up so that we can get the cameras where they need to be. We can schedule the appropriate times to get, the type of content that we want for our fans, for our community.
Okay, well, let's actually go a little bit more into that then. So, you talked about what works, what doesn't work. So, what are some of the things that you, when I say you here, I'm referring to the org, have learned in what works and what doesn't work? What are some of the things that you've all tried and perhaps you said, oh, you know what, this is a better way of doing it, or okay, maybe this is somewhat effective for this particular brand or this particular esport, but it doesn't work so well for another one?
So I think you'll notice sort of like throughout 2017, we strive to put a lot of different content out on our channel. And it was a lot of experimenting, especially for me, because CSGO is a completely different animal in a sense that it is difficult in finding, how can I create content that both aligns with what CLG is supposed to look and feel like versus like what the CSGO community likes to watch, right? And I think
can you give some more examples of that?
Yeah, so like sort of towards around the whole concept of like the docu-series, creating like the underdogs, right? A lot of that was challenging because while it's something that's really important to creating a narrative and making sure that the stories of these players are told and making sure that, it's something that really captures the essence of CLG and CSGO, it's very difficult because something like that is not always what the community likes to watch, especially like if you're not in the top 10 in the world, it's really hard to get exposure. Like people don't watch that stuff unless you're winning. And it's hard to find that sort of balance between making, narrative series or do I make a funny piece? I actually, towards the tail end, I started working more on like the off the record series and bringing CSGO into that. I made like 3 episodes before, it got overwhelming for me to handle so much content at once. Okay.
So how do you choose then what sort of content to work on at a given time, what to produce? Also because you said, you're going to try to figure out what to do for a long term and then what to talk about. Well, if you have something that you're currently working on, you're planning for, say, a release within the next few days versus a month from now, or maybe 6 months from now. So how do you actually choose then what to work on at any given moment?
I think it's like it's an open discussion amongst the content staff here. Me, Jack, Chris, and Nick even gets involved in the conversation. We all provide and ask very important questions, and we all come together and create like a roadmap in a sense of like, all right, well, here's how long the season is, right? What sort of beats do we need to hit, right? So there's always, like MSI, there's playoffs, there's, roster lock, stuff like that we need to consider when we're like, should we release a video around it? Or is there something valuable that we can provide or something interesting that we can talk about during those time periods, right? So right now it's like, there's season starts next weekend, and we're very hyped about it. We want to make sure that hype that we have for LCS starting is translated into our content. We want to let people know that we're hyped. We're ready, man. We're ready.
Right. So, and with the latest video that you released today, actually, the Biofrost one, how long does it take to go from, say, knowing that you're picking up Biofrost as a player to making a video like that for the fans?
I think it's sort of like hard to come to a like final decision about how we go about that, because lately with all the shuffling, and especially people are remarking about how a lot of the staff is sort of, it's like the changing of the guard right now.
Yeah, with the MSI buying CLG out.
MSG, but yeah.
Or MSG, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, there was an interview that got released today with Nick Allen, being interviewed by Travis.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and he was going over a lot of that about how some people wanted to stay on, some people wanted to move on and explore different opportunities. So, yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so, like, I think with everything is, like, really crazy right now. We're, like, really busy. All of us are handling a lot at the same time. So I think the decision to make all these videos, while it was sort of thought about and considered, like, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, things weren't really set in motion until, I guess, sort of, like, the new year. Partly because I was on vacation for a bit. It was my first vacation in, like, I don't know, 2 years. But it was like, we knew what we wanted, so we just made it happen. And you're going to start to see, like, throughout the rest of the week that, Biofrost isn't the last one that we're going to have,
Awesome. I mean, every time the CLG org loses a player or gains a player, it's great to get these videos that you guys are doing to be able to kind of learn a little bit more about the players. And I think with the Underdog series that you worked on, that was really great. I actually just finished watching a few episodes of them again, and it was kind of great to see all those little bits of the day-to-day lives of the players, like what they're doing before, what they're doing after, see the mood swings almost as well for those players. And so how is that something that you can capture every time? Or, like, how do you plan to capture that? Do you, like, have a camera there waiting for them, like, as soon as they walk off stage?
So with CSGO, I breathed CSGO with those guys. I lived with them. I was there at practice every day. My desk was like, it was an interesting setup where, they have a practice room, and it was like, I was in the kitchen next door. Like, that was where my desk was. I worked in the kitchen. And that was just because, I had an office space, right? And at the main, like, the CLG house, but I preferred to get in there with them. I preferred to listen to their conversations, see how their practices were going day in, day out, and basically became one of the guys, right? I was there with
awesome.
them when their ups and their downs.
Mm-hmm. And especially with some of the shots that you had, there were some great shots, where they're having a great time, they're messing around. Ricky is like sticking his tongue out and licking weird things. And then there's other moments, after a loss, like a heartbreaking loss, you're interviewing, say, Kusta, and he's just like, he's straight faced, and it's hard for him to kind of look straight at the camera, almost like he doesn't want to be there, but he knows that it has to be done because it's something that kind of gets across the point that, these guys aren't going into a match and being like, oh well, it doesn't really matter if we win or lose. These guys wanted to win, and ultimately didn't.
Yeah, I think what I wanted the CS:GO community to understand as a whole is like, yeah, a lot of people have seen North American Counter-Strike as a joke for a long time, but it's not like these guys don't take it seriously, right? Um, Everybody's a gamer, but these guys really, they do want to win, you know? And unfortunately, like, while we don't have a Counter-Strike division anymore in the pro scene, I think you still see sort of like the Team Liquid, the Cloud9, right? Those guys are still chasing it. You got the Energy guys still chasing it. And I think like it's just very interesting because capturing the emotions, I had hoped would, you know, shed some light on how these pro gamers really feel, you know, how many hours they really put into the game. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
you really could get that from the shots that you were getting. It's like these guys were devastated when they
Yeah.
lost.
And
Actually, I want to explore that a little bit. So I would imagine that a lot of times after a loss, the players, or perhaps even Ryu as the coach, presumably don't want to talk about that loss, especially on camera, because you're not exactly in the best mental state, right? Whether you're just upset or angry or whatever it is. So, how is that decided as to who's going to be the one that talks on the camera after a loss, or even after a victory, right?
yeah, I think it's sort of like they're all operating under the expectation that there's a post game kind of debriefing interview, whether it happens immediately after or whether it happens, you know, when we get back to the gaming house after a tournament from traveling. They all expect it to happen, and it's just about, you know, finding a time to get them in and to talk about it. Sometimes it's harder to talk about those things than other times. One example was with DreamHack Valencia. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with what happened, but, you know, essentially we had almost won it, in a sense, like we were right there. We're gonna get out of groups, not a problem, and then that whole Kusta defuse incident happened.
God, don't get me started on that.
Yeah,
Watching that was
so-
heartbreaking.
Man,
After
going
that-
going right up until the moment and then just barely not making it is like the story of CLG and everything.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
It's awful. But,
But basically, what happened was, you know, obviously I had the intention of interviewing them while they're still there, while it's still fresh. But even then, me being there and witnessing that in the flesh, I was like, there's just no way I can get these players to sit down and talk about that. Not here, not now. Like, that is not the time and place to talk about
Yeah,
that.
I could see that. Like, especially since you're living and breathing it with them, you probably felt the same loss that they did.
Yeah, we didn't get out of the venue, I think, until like 1 or 2 in the morning. Like, that match was so long.
so do you think it helps that because you're you live and breathe CSGO along with them, that whenever they do a post-game interview with you, obviously if it's a victory, you're going to share that same feeling of happiness, right? But also, when you lose, it's not just some random reporter coming in because it's going to be a story in which they can get a bunch of clicks on. It's someone who actually feels that same sort of pain.
Yeah, I mean, I developed a good relationship with the guys. They're still my friends. And I think they understood that the sort of questions I asked were guiding questions, especially because I always like to pick like maybe 1 or 2 key rounds during the match, and sort of dissect that, you know?
So how do you pick those rounds? What do you look at and say, okay, this was obviously a very key turning point in the game. You can go for that, but sometimes the games are just super evenly matched up, right?
I mean, I think it comes with playing Counter-Strike for a while. Like, yeah, I'm a casual player, but I've watched it long enough to understand what are like, important key swing rounds, which rounds were like important in maintaining an economy, stuff like that. And I have my eyes and ears everywhere, like all at the same time when I'm shooting an event. I have, the camera's always hot, the mic's always hot. I'm doing social media coverage, and I'm also, watching the match as it's happening. So I'm filming the guys and I'm paying attention to like what's actually happening on the screen.
Have you ever run into someone like just like tripped over someone or something while doing that, like just because your attention is so focused?
Not that I can recall. I feel like I've tripped over something when the camera isn't live, but when I'm actually working, I don't think I've ever tripped on stage.
I mean, you could be so focused you didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be a pretty big deal if I tripped on a broadcast.
All right. So, what about Ryu as a coach? Is interviewing him drastically different than interviewing the players? Because I would presume a coach would be a lot more reserved and not want to expose anything or leak anything. So, how do you actually get people to open up there?
Actually, I think Ryu's great. It was very. I think it comes from having experience as both a coach and an org owner, in a sense that you understand the importance of having a healthy discussion. Right, you have the understanding of the importance of transparency and telling people how it is. There's no sugarcoating stuff. Sometimes you just have to tell it like, what, we didn't play well, and that was that. I think Ryu does a really good job with that. He's pretty upstanding guy, well-spoken. So it wasn't too bad. Like, I enjoyed working with him during our brief time together.
All right. So, just to shift focus a little bit. So you originally talked about how you were an editor. The name is escaping me.
Miss Harvey.
For Miss Harvey?
For Miss Harvey, thank you. So just moving to CS Red. CLG Red. Why is it so difficult to actually find content for them? Because whenever we go and try to find something to cover on them, it's very difficult to actually find a stream or VODs or any replays to look at,
right,
or highlights. And then if we find anything, it's usually just the match result.
Okay. So with CLG Red, it's a lot to do with balancing the amount of content we put out. I think first of all, the reality is that CLG is a very League of Legends oriented company. So it's sort of me to be the advocate saying, hey, we need some CLG Red content, or hey, I want to do something for CLG Red, and we just don't have the appropriate time or the resources. But even more, speaking on top of that, I think their matches are really difficult to stream consistently because there's no consistent schedule in ESEA main. It's kind of like this last season, there were so many teams. I think there were like over 100 something.
Wow.
And the way this scheduling works is sort of like the teams agree on like a mutual time and date, and then that always is still up in the air. And so it's really hard to say, like, keep track of that and say, hey, okay, I need to stream their game at Tuesday at 6 p.m., but then they also have a match like Thursday at 10 p.m. So it gets really hard to create consistent schedule with that.
Does the same apply for the academy team?
Yeah, it also applied to them. They did play in the Mountain Dew League, which was a little bit better in terms of consistency. But then you also have the fact that a lot of casters or up and coming, like trying to develop their casting careers, would stream those matches already. So it was also just like, hey, they're already being broadcasted. Let's just hit that with a retweet and watch their matches there. Obviously, like, I still kept track of like their scores when they would play, how their standings looked like, but it was just hard because, I mean, on top of that, you had the blue team, which were competing in, ESL Pro League and ECS, and this qualifier, that qualifier. So this like huge oversaturation of matches to cover.
Yeah, like I think one of the first ways I actually discovered CLG Red, outside of the org, was actually like I believe he's Seaside CS, where he kind of he's a great guy, and he would do his best when CLG Red or even Blue were playing to restream the games for it.
Yeah, he's definitely a great caster. Definitely appreciate all the times he's streamed the Red games. Talked to him a couple events. He's a dope dude.
Yeah.
All right. So just to shift gears a little bit, what are the differences between making videos for the team-based esports such as League and CSGO, or when we had the Overwatch team versus say Smash, which is a lot more individual and single player focused, right? I mean, you'd still have teams, but it's still the duo that's very player focused, right?
So what you'll kind of see if you look back at 2017 on the content we've sort of made was that we actually didn't make a lot of content around Smash. We had very few videos, if any. I think the most important one was the Road series, our episode on SFAT. And I think that was also like a problem with resource allocation. There are a lot of things going on in League of Legends, and we just didn't have the manpower, right, to create, powerful and, good content for the Smash guys on top of everything we were already doing. So, but I think what's going to happen is like, as we buckle down and create a better roadmap for this year, you're going to see a lot more Smash content. Like,
awesome.
I really like the Smash guys. I think they're absolutely fantastic. They're always fun to be around. Void is like insane right now. I don't know if you were watching his performance at PAX, but like I think the first day he just went clean out of like he won every single game. It was nuts. And you got the Pew Fat guys. They're just great. Like I want to make more content with them. I know Jack wants to make more content with them.
Who's the biggest? What's the word? Trash talker.
Trash talker.
Which one's the biggest trash talker
in Smash? Or
out of I guess out of any of the players.
Man, if you were to,
it's who he, isn't it?
No,
it's gotta be who he.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. We actually tried a series where we try to get them to like trash talk each other a little bit.
Ooh, each other.
We decided actually to trash that series because they were like, we can't do it. These guys are so nice to each other. It's like, the stereotype, like Canadians are always like nice and they compliment and whatnot. Dude, these guys they're too nice. They're so humble about like the way they carry themselves.
We thought the COG as a family thing was just a meme.
Yeah,
nah,
I thought
dude.
it was just a meme.
It's really
nice. It's just George rubbing off on all the guys.
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, I gotta give him my Canadian love. He's a fellow Canadian. That's the main reason I started following CLG was because Hotshot was Canadian.
Yeah, they're just too nice. Like it's hard. If you were to include CSGO, I could like definitely like tell you
I excluded them for a reason because it's CSGO.
Oh yeah, CSGO is like all trash talk.
That's all it. That's everything. It's like you go on Twitter and it's just them trash talking each other and sending each other frag clips.
You just gotta.
Or threatening to kill someone. I mean,
Oh yeah. You never know.
That happens.
Ooh, that's a big oof.
So I guess on that, what was your reaction when that happened? Like, did you go to FNS and just be like, "Yo, like, don't go on Twitter"?
Man, I remember it was me, Ryu, and Mike in a hotel room, and we saw all of this, unfolding on Twitter, and we were just like, "What is going on?" It was wild because like the players themselves, they all went out for dinner out of the hotel. And like as all this was happening, we're just like, yo, dude, like don't come back to the hotel until things like settle down, because we have no idea. I know like Ryu and Zach were talking and trying to figure things out, and like it was wild. Like I can't believe a player would sort of like react that way.
Yeah.
And then like when the players did come back to the hotel, you know, we went out and we got them and we brought them in and we're like, dude, just go to your room and like just stop tweeting. Please, just stop.
You gotta love how like social media has played such a weird role in the growth of esports in general.
Oh man, all the Twitter drama.
Oh, it's the best, isn't it?
It's spicy.
It is spicy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess onto that. In general, when you're making videos and stuff like that, well, I guess one more question on social media is how closely do you handle Twitter and Facebook and all that, or who really runs all of that in general?
So we previously had a social media coordinator in marketing. Her name was Julia. She's also no longer with the company. But she was the one that handled the social media accounts primarily, especially like Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, stuff like that, right? But I would occasionally help out, especially because like I was hip with the CSGO stuff. And I was like, you know, if something, for example, like the Kusta spin diffuser, I was like, yo, dude, you got to hop on that. You see this clip? You got to post that. You know, I helped run the CLG Red Twitter here and there, you know, with the memes and stuff. Yeah, like I handled the CSGO Instagram for a bit, just so that like she had, you know, a little bit of lifestyle, everyday, you know, occurrences inside the house, because I was always there, you know.
Nice.
So I guess to transition a little bit, what about the videos that some of the players might upload on their own personal YouTube channels, things like that? And the point I'm going with this is branding. You know, they might upload that just because it brings in some revenue, it shows off some of their personality, things like that. Do you help them with that, or is that something that they choose to do? Or
yeah, so I think something we also tried to experiment with last year, I think in like Q3 or Q4, was we actually started helping. I mean, we were doing that, but we sort of stepped up in helping players create content for their own YouTube channels, right? We have Louis here, who is an editor, and he was helping edit all the player like highlights from their streams and helping them create their channels, you know, make videos consistently, because, you know, we tell them like a big part of your career in esports is your individual branding as well. And we want to help you like grow that on top of, you know, growing CLG as a brand. It's, you know, awesome. It's a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you grow a brand for Norg? No, because a lot of times if you don't say anything, then it just whatever gets posted on social media, that ends up being the face of the org. Obviously that can go bad in some very infamous cases, like the Dunzo Manifesto.
So I think it's a very tricky topic, just because the way some orgs handle it are like, you know, you have the TSM, you have the C9 with like Reggie and Jack, and you have Immortals with Noah, who are very front facing, and, you know, they will try to do sort of like the damage control and let their fan base and their community know what's going on. And I think in the past, CLG clearly had a problem with that. But ever since I've been here, you know, ever since we've had, I guess, even during the MatCom days, right? People have been more inclined to talk about the issues. And while it's hard to get like a very transparent answer on some topics, especially if they're really sensitive, like internal team decisions, right? I try to push for, like, with Coach Mike or Coach Ryu, or even when we had Chet, I'm a pet. I wanted them to talk about the issues with CSGO, right? And what they're doing to move forward with it.
Right. So the reason I ask is because, excuse me, sometimes players are let go or people leave and they go to other works, and then you see them on other talk shows like, some interview with Thorne or something like that. And that's when they start going into some things about the org, and sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. And, sometimes it gets bad enough that the org has to respond. Sometimes they just choose to ignore it and keep quiet. So at what point does the org actually decide, this is something that we're going to discuss? I know you're saying we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but is there anything in particular that says, all right, this is a priority which we need to actually sit down and discuss, and then release something, or we're just going to ignore it because, tomorrow's going to have something new with someone else?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a pretty big topic of discussion whenever something like that does happen, right? When we decided to pull out of CSGO, we talked about it a lot before making a final decision on how we should approach it. And even then, it's interesting because we actually had 2 videos prepared for the announcement. And one was sort of like a talking heads video, where, Nick Allen actually talks about the reasons for withdrawing from CSGO. And due to, reasons out of my control or understanding, like, the final video wasn't released. And I think that actually hurt us, because what ended up happening was the discussion that Nick had with Travis Gafford in his recent interview was actually, like, the same exact points. So I think it would have been more beneficial if people had known earlier those exact reasons. But, not my call.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think, like, if you look back, I know you guys recently brought up before in a past conversation of, like, Chasing the Cup series with CLG.
Yes.
I actually watched that again. And I think you sort of see a difference in how esports has developed over the past couple of years. The players back then were a lot more immature in a sense and young, and the whole industry as a whole is young, so people didn't really understand the consequences of what they were saying, right? They didn't understand the power of the internet and the digital space that they were getting into when they say these things. But now, players are a lot more mature, things are really big, and they start to feel the weight of what they say. So, it's you have to tread the waters very carefully, because you can affect your relationship with, past and future, employers.
Yeah. So on that kind of topic, is that something that, as someone like yourself who's doing some of the social media and you're doing the videos, is that something that you kind of coach the players on as well? Like, hey, you're about to do an interview with, say, Travis or someone, like, maybe don't say something like this, or, is there something that you will point out to them?
Not so much. I think the league guys are pretty good at interviews. They're very well spoken. They know what they're talking about.
Have you heard of this guy named Doublelift?
Right. Well, I think he's a special case. But, like, working with the CLG League of Legends guys, I think they're very smart about what they say. And personally, for me, I don't really do any coaching with them and, like, telling them, hey, you need to say this, or you should avoid talking about that. I think maybe Chris helps them a little bit with that, and Jack, just because they have a better relationship with each other. But from my end, like, I think they kill it. I think they say exactly what, should be said, and I think they represent CLG very well.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't get to see what's on the chopping block in the editing, but every time I've watched a video, of them being interviewed, it's makes them look like very down to earth people, and You know, it's like someone that if you were their friend, you would just be like, whoa, that's really cool to see Stixay up there getting an interview like that.
Yeah, they're very down to earth, and that's like something that has always stuck in CLG. Like even when I first came here, and we had Xmithy, dude, I love Jake, man. Like
Oh,
he was
great.
like he was like the first guy on the league team that I actually became friends with, and I was like, yo, dude, you're playing. I forgot which MMO it was. Black Desert.
Oh
He
gosh.
was playing Black Desert. I was like, yo, dude, I just bought the game. Like, let's play.
Nice.
It was great times.
So, I actually wanted to ask, going back a little bit to the Chasing the Cup series, right? Because there was a lot of, let's just say, some negative backlash of the video, and it sounds like COG learned a lot from it. Do you think that's a contributing factor as to why COG doesn't have their own weekly series like TSM's, whatever it's called, TSM Legends or Fanatics? I think it's Life of Stars or Legends or something like that, whatever it is, right?
So I think, I don't know, like, who's been afraid of it. I think with CSGO, I just was like, I'm doing it, I'm making these videos for every event we go to, and that's that, right? And you can see like how the players warmed up to it afterward. But I think with League of Legends, I think they were afraid of the idea just because they weren't sure how to tell the story, or they weren't sure if they had the resources or manpower to execute it to the standard that we want it, right? But what I can say now is, it's coming.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Fancy.
I like that.
So there's a lot of different places we can go because I have a lot of different questions. Just gonna, I know I keep going backwards a little bit. Going back to just building an org and a brand. So I guess a lot of people would tell you, especially if you're not a close follower of CLG, that they're just this very happy big family of an org. Everyone there's just supposedly super nice, and then it's all about the attitude in which you display things like that over just raw mechanical skill. At the very least, that's been known to apply a lot for the league players. So, but then COG would go and pick up a player like Dardoch, who has a little bit of a reputation surrounding him and is a little bit more of a personality. Or they're willing to do a lot of the hard decisions like letting go of double lift. So how do you perhaps shut off some of that narrative? I mean, these decisions obviously help, but then when you make a video or something like that, this image of COG still stays. And then a lot of times, because, that friendship mean like COG is all about friendship. Or even if the player is bad, we'll just keep him because of friendship, right? Even if you're willing to do these hard decisions, that meme still stays.
Man, I think this is a very good question that I know Matt, our esports director, can really hammer home. But I think it's important to say that, like, I like the concept of CLG fam. I think it's a very very strong foundation that as an org we can pride ourselves in. But at the end of the day, we all agree, like, it is competition. We are all, like, all the players want to win, and that's like kind of what brings them together. So I think if you go back and you're like, oh, why did CLG remove double lift? Well, there's more to winning than just having a superstar team, and that trade-off proved itself in the short term. And then the same thing happened with sort of like the Dardoch acquisition. It was like CLG is taking a risky investment in hoping that you can take their jungling to a new level, right?
Okay. I guess just to finish off in regards to branding. So some players, like, say, Stixay, have a lot of shoes to fill because they're filling in for a very well-known, very vocal player like Doublelift. how do you brand a player like Stixay who's seen as a lot more quiet?
Um, it is very challenging. I don't think I tackle like that specific sort of question on a day to day, but I mean, you're always gonna have like a quieter personality. But I think talent speaks for itself. Uh, like when I worked with CSGO, I guess I'll just refer to CSGO team as an example. Um, a lot of the times, finesse, right? He's the most outspoken, well spoken kind of guy. And I would usually refer to him for like answers and guiding the team in post game interviews. But you have individuals like Ethan, right? Who, he's an up and coming player. He's not that comfortable with interviews yet. He doesn't talk very much, but he'll learn with time, right? He'll get better at it. I think Trevor, I mean Stixay, he's pretty good at it. But I think his raw talent actually just speaks for itself sometimes.
Okay. What about, and maybe you don't have as much experience on this front, but for some players like Huhi and Rainover who English is not their native language, there might be a little bit of a language barrier while you're interviewing them or filming them, and perhaps something gets lost in translation. Have you had any difficulties with that? Or, I mean, I know you said you're primary CSGO, which is why I'm just curious though.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with both of them a lot recently, and I don't think there's a lot of difficulty in working with them. I think their English is pretty good. Obviously, like Huhi a little bit more so than Rainover, but I think they're both like fantastic to work with. They're very patient with us as we try to get the best sort of content and like interviews out of them, and they both try like their hardest to work with us as well. Like it doesn't seem too difficult. Like yeah, it just goes pretty well. I think that's because like also we have a good relationship with them.
Okay. So let's move on to another topic. Arjun, you want to talk about anything?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't know how much you can speak about this, but there was a current leak on the RCLG subreddit about CLG possibly coming into Smite. Someone getting an email with current Smite teams coming up, and you probably can't do that, but can't confirm or deny that. But how would you say, especially now that CSGO is gone, how does CLG think about picking up another esports team, and how would you go about building content for that team, going into it maybe not knowing a whole lot about the game itself?
Right, because it could be Smite or PUBG or Dota or anything else.
Yeah.
Man, it's actually funny because when I saw the article, I was like, huh, are we getting a Smite team? Like, that's the first I've heard from this. Anything that happens in the esports department, I don't really follow close tabs until like it's finalized, it comes to the door, and it's like, all right, this is happening. Now, here it is, content team, let's make the announcement, right?
Gotcha.
So as far as my knowledge, like with all the team acquisitions, I'm not entirely sure. But from my approach in creating content for especially a game that I'm unfamiliar with, so like especially like I came from CSGO and then like we picked up the Overwatch team. I was like, all right, now I got to do Overwatch content. Let's see, how this goes. Part of it was playing the game a little bit more and watching. I spent a lot of time watching content from competitors.
Yeah, and then COG let him go. You're like, I don't have to watch this anymore. It's too difficult.
Yeah, right. But yeah, like I'd watch a lot of content and try to understand what the community looks like from an outsider's perspective.
That's pretty cool then. So you kind of go in and see what the community is, what kind of content is already in the community and what's positive, and then kind of try to look towards making something similar with the own CS or CLG twist.
Yeah, or like what sort of content hasn't been introduced into the community, right? So that's sort of why I brought CS:GO into Off the Record, because the last time the CS:GO community sort of dabbled in that was back, I think, it was like an ESL major or something, where like people got all excited over the funny moments when people released like the Cloud9 comms from like a match, and they
Yeah.
found like, oh, Jordan's hilarious, or like stuff like that. Like I wanted to bring that back. I wanted people to hear those comms, hear those funny moments. I think it was just like the CS:GO community was so scared of releasing comms. I was just like, you know what, just do it. Make
Yeah,
content that isn't out there yet.
and watching some of those videos, like, it actually makes you connect a little bit more with the players in general. If you can, you're obviously not going to release the entire comms, but it's a nice connection that you can see them when they're playing, like, they talk just like you playing the game.
Yeah.
So, see, for me, I think of a few moments when I think of the comms being released. The first one that immediately came to mind was our Halo boys when they were in the World Championship match that they had, and they were defending champions, right? And they were just styling on their opponents, and then they're shit talking them in the middle of the game. I don't know why that came up to me, but I thought of that. But then another one that I also thought of was the one where CLG's fighting Team Liquid, and they've been somewhat behind throughout the game. And there's I think it's a Elder Drake, and Afromoot just says, this is it, this is our fight, boys, and they just go right into it and they come out. I think that was an example of leadership that Afromoot brought. So little things like that, I think, were pretty interesting. I also don't understand how they ever communicate in game, because it just sounds like constant screaming to me.
Sometimes that's what it is.
Yeah, that's definitely how it is sometimes, man.
So, I mean, with the loss of the CSGO team, what are your plans, if you can talk about them, moving forward for CLG content? Like, are you being put onto League of Legends duty, or are you going to be maybe helping out with the Smash community a little bit more?
I think it's more of a step away from, being game specific person to person. I think Nick has done a really good job of saying, you know what, I want all the video team to just come together under one roof, stop focusing on a single game, and we're all gonna, make great content together. So we're all focusing on creating content for the org as a whole, whether it be, League of Legends, Smash, H1Z1. The content becomes exponentially better when you have multiple minds working on the same goal.
Okay.
It becomes no longer an issue of like resource and manpower, whereas like, for CSGO, I was working on everything, right? I was ideating, I was filming, I was, editing from top to bottom. But now it's like, okay, well, we want to make this video. Let's talk about what sort of goals we want from this video, how we can execute it, what should it look like, handle so much more logistics and planning to get like a piece of content that's much better than what we could produce individually.
Okay. So, back when CLG actually had Hearthstone, how do you go about marketing something that like Hearthstone, where it's just fundamentally different to watch, right? It's the game is a lot more, say, strategic than the fast action gameplay that you're used to from some of the other esports like CS:GO.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I never really followed Hearthstone.
I mean, no one did, but that's a different story.
Yeah, like even when we had Hearthstone, I just couldn't find time to keep tabs on it. And we had it for such a short period of time that it was like, oh, dang, okay, I guess we pulled out a Hearthstone already. Like, I didn't even get to meet the guys.
Oh, I guess a lot of those guys were very remote.
Yeah,
Like,
I think they were all from Europe. or
Oh, okay.
something.
So that's actually an interesting point. So what are some of the challenges then of getting content out for people who live remotely?
It is very hard.
I mean, I could guess that, but
Yeah, I think we try to make the most of opportunities when uh, we do travel to like events with them. So,
Mhm.
say for example, when who is it? The which team? I think with Smash, it's more prevalent where since like the Smash guys, they all live remotely. When they fly
Mhm.
to events, we have like photographers take photos for them. Um, we make the most out of those kind of opportunities. And I think it would be the same if we didn't have a CSGO house, right? A
Mhm.
lot of CSGO teams, they live remote, they all live at home.
Mhm.
And that's how other esports orgs do it, right? When the teams go to events, that's when they send their video guy, that's when they send their photographer. Um, and that's pretty much how we do it too, or how we've done it in the past.
Right on. So what about for, non esports related guys? Because I mean, you got Smash, H1Z1, League of Legends, but you've also got a lot of streamers under the brand. The biggest one being like Trick2G and Shifter, but you've also got people, like who just came on like Yasuo, iCasper, Tamorag, HJ Tenchi.
Hmm.
How do you work with those guys at all, or maybe just give them tips here and there for their content?
I think they're actually all pretty good at what they do in sense of like this is their full-time career, right? Content
Mhm.
creating is their full-time job. So
Mm-hmm.
they understand like the importance of it. So I feel like it's like not as beneficial like for me to come in and say, "Hey, like you should do this," right? Because they're already
Mhm.
doing it. Like
Gotcha.
like Casper's already on the grind. Tenshi's
He's
always on the
crazy.
grind. Curry Shot is on the grind.
Mm-hmm.
Like these guys are all great streamers that know the importance of content.
So
So
what about like if you're going to an event, say, you know, I guess obviously you're not at PAX South, but say you were to go to PAX South and take some shots there, how would you kind of market that as the CLG brand if it was someone that's a little more unknown in the CLG organization, such as, like I guess Yasuo just joined?
Hmm.
Or is that something that you've ever done, like gone to say like a PAX South or TwitchCon or something like that to get content to make for the CLG org itself to improve the brand?
I think that's something we're exploring this year. In terms of like what kind of content can we make with our stream team in a sense. We didn't do much last year, just resource wise, but from a historical perspective, like we have invited our stream team, hey, do you want to come out to this event? You want to come out to TwitchCon? You want to come out to Anime Expo? Like we can make that happen, right? Or sometimes like they're already there and we're like, hey, we'll hold a meet and greet for you, you know,
Mhm.
we'll get you over at our booth and we'll make things happen. But in terms of content, like we didn't make much last year. Just it was really hard. That was like one of the most challenging things.
So a question just occurred to me. So some players which you get are very new to the scene. So oh my god, for example, no one really knows who he is or anything about him. But other players which the org might get, say Rainover or Biofrost, they're fairly well known at this point, right? They've already had other orgs they've been with. We've seen a little bit of their personality, who they are. What are the differences a little bit then in trying to produce content based around those players versus the ones who are new and we don't know anything about? Because for example, Oh my god got his a Rhodes video, whereas some of the other players who we've known for a while don't have one yet. Does that play an influence in that?
Yeah, I think it has to do with, oh well, for Rhodes specifically, I think it was timing. Um, the first season of Rhodes was produced around that roster time. So it just made sense to make a video for each of the players we had on the team. So for example, if Dardoch had stayed, right? If Dardoch stayed on the team, then we would have made an episode for him. But because Omar was on the team and he was such a important piece of the puzzle at that time, like he was the one to get an episode, you know?
Okay.
And it's like, well, since Bio and Rainover are like the most recent acquisitions, like we haven't had sort of the time to sit down and plan out those episodes really. Everything's a process, and it just takes a lot of planning. Like I think with content, we don't want to just jump in and do it per se, as you know most esports has done in the past. We're like really thinking things through, and that's sort of why like last month we didn't have a lot of content out.
Okay. I guess we're nearing the end of this interview. I have two extremely important questions though. So the first one, what is Tony's obsession with Gragas? It's really important that we know this.
I don't even know. That's a very interesting question. Might have to add him on Twitter for that.
He refuses to answer.
Does he have a picture of Gragas in his bedroom, like on his bedside table?
Or is he just a
no
Gragas
comment?
one-trick?
I will not confirm or deny that.
Alright, and the second one, so, and this is just me just wondering. So often, you saw COG go out, and then you maybe look at the map positions like, oh, we played on Inferno. Why did they play on Inferno?
Dude, Inferno.
What was the deal with Inferno? I have to know.
Like the answer is right there, Inferno.
Honestly, I think it came from the sense of like in practice and the way we play the game on Inferno, like we're confident that we can win. And I actually didn't like disagree with them. I thought they had a solid play on Inferno. It was always like we lost because of small individual little mistakes, or you know, I think it really had to do with when a team was really good with Inferno, or like when a team is really good in general, right? They will take any small opportunity to get an advantage and run with it. I think that's why like we never found that breaking point of success with taking a series off of SK Gaming or Astralis, right? Because they're really good at exploiting like a very small thing and running with that until it becomes like holy moly, like they won the map because of that. And I think with Inferno, it's the same concept where we felt really confident with Inferno, but it was little small things every single time that would cause us to lose.
Okay. Alright, so I think that's all the questions I have. Archon, do you have any you want to ask?
I was just looking at some of the results here, and I mean, again, you probably can't confirm or deny. I'm looking at Cosmo, a Smash player, Smash 4. He's wearing a CLG hoodie.
Where is
Maybe
this?
It's just Voids. It's actually on at PAX Arena, PAX South.
Interesting. I mean,
Interesting.
He's
I
gonna
don't
end
know
this
if you'd
interview
say
and be
it.
like, hey, go out to PAX South and start filming.
Well, it looks like he's got to start plugging our
Sponsors?
our store, dude. Store.clgaming.net.
There you go. Absolutely. They got some sweet stuff.
We got the new jerseys coming out. I'm sure we have more merchandise coming out.
Oh yeah, those stealth jackets look sleek.
Yeah.
Fully
Stay
shipping to
tuned.
Canada.
So, can you tell us anything that is perhaps in the works, or hint at something that's going to be coming out? Any videos, that is.
Right. So expect a lot of content this week. We have quite a lot of content. I know it's going
Why
to be
is
a
something
lot
happening
of.
soon?
Oh yeah, we got opening weekend of LCS. No big deal.
No big deal at all. No.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of content around that. I know Jack's in like overdrive mode, so kudos to him right now. I'm here talking on this show, and he's editing the videos like nonstop. A lot of late nights put in, but hopefully, the community reacts in a good way. I hope they like it.
Yeah. I mean, we appreciate all the work you put in.
Are there any new video series that'll be coming out soon?
We are working on getting a sort of docu-series for this season.
Nice.
The name, the concept of it, we're still like, as it's coming down the line, like to the day when we really need to start it and kickstart it, it's like really tight. But every day, we're talking about this, we're figuring it out before we jump in, right? Because we don't want to tell the wrong story, or we don't want to go in and like half-ass it. We want this to be the central driving story of like CLG in 2018.
All right. I know I said I had no more questions, but there's one that just came to me. So we started our podcast, and about a month later, CLG started their own, and they called it quits after 4 episodes. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying one group followed through, the other didn't. So, can you give us a little bit of a reason as to why? So CLG is, producing these videos in a podcast form, being a little bit more transparent, talking about what's going on. Mm-hmm. Why did they stop, right? Because those are something that obviously they can communicate with all their fans, etc., get a message out, all those sort of things. Was it just too busy, or what was happening during that time that they stopped?
Yeah, so the podcast thing was like a personal.
Or did they just accept that we do it better?
Oof. The podcast thing was something Devin wanted to do for such a long time. Melixia, our previous COO, he really wanted to do it. It was always just like a lack of time or resources. And there was just a turning point in him. Like, he was just like, you know what? Let's just do it. I don't care how it happens. I don't care about logistics. Let's just make these podcasts happen, right? So we ended up we filmed it in his like a makeshift office. And there were some really great conversations out of those, but it also came around the time of like the LCS application deadlines, the finalizing touches on like the MSG acquisition. So all of that stuff, on top already, made it really hard to find a consistent schedule to film, record, review all these podcasts. Yeah, that was like, it was like a huge personal endeavor, and unfortunately, we couldn't fully commit to like making an episode consistently because of all the crazy, partnerships and acquisitions that were going on.
Did it have to be Devin doing the videos? Could it have been someone else, say the director of esports, or just a different person each time talking about a particular topic?
Devin wanted to do it.
I see.
Yeah, he asks a lot of great questions, and he really knows how to go into a much deeper conversation with each individual.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, guys.
All right. Yeah, so I think that wraps up our interview.
Yeah. So Ricky, if you want, where can people find you?
They can go ahead and find me on Twitter, memeing, it's Lamb Ricky with 2 M's.
2 M's.
Yeah.
And we'll link in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for being on here.
Yeah. Do you have any YouTube channel of your own that you want to plug, or just the CLG one?
Yeah, just youtube.com/counterlogicgaming, and visit our store.clgaming.net.
Awesome. Pick up a sweet shirt. The CLG fighting shirt is amazing.
Oh, you got one? It's nice, right?
I got one at TwitchCon and got all the League boys to sign it, including Tony.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Archon? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at ArchonTV.
All right, and this is Nefarious. You can just find me on Twitter at NEFARI0USS. And I think that wraps up the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot for listening, everyone. And have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Ricky, for being on board.
All right.
Yeah,
No problem.
so the CLG Faithful podcast is a weekly podcast. We go over all things CLG each and every week. And, if you like what we do, just take a few minutes to the usual social media plugs. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, give ratings on iTunes or Google Play. We love getting feedback, so send us your thoughts over at clg-faithful.com, and we promise to respond.
Right on. Peace out.
See ya.
And stop.